The man who wrote Land of the Free, Home of the Brave, Francis Scott Key, helped found an organization whose entire mission was to ship free black people out of America. 3 U.S. presidents backed it, a Supreme Court justice, congressmen, clergy. And here's the part that will bend your brain. Some respected black abolitionists supported it too, at least at first. This is the story of the American Colonization Society and the 50-year plan to deport us before we even got the right to call ourselves citizens. 1816, Washington, D.C., a group of the most powerful men in America gathered to launch the American Colonization Society. Henry Clay, Francis Scott Key, Bushrod Washington, George Washington's actual nephew, congressman, clergyman, a Supreme Court justice. Their mission, in their own words, to colonize, with their consent, the free people of color residing in our country, in Africa. Translation: send free black people to Africa. Why? Look at the numbers. After the Revolutionary War, America's free black population exploded, from 59,000 to 186,000 in just a few decades, a 215% jump. Meanwhile, the enslaved population only grew by 70%. Most of these free folks had bought their freedom, fought for it, escaped. They were building churches, businesses, schools. They were organized, they were vocal, and they were not going anywhere. That terrified the people in power. So why would black abolitionists ever back this? Why would Richard Allen, founder of the AME Church, or James Forten, one of the wealthiest black men in America, give this thing the time of day? Because at first, the pitch sounded like a real shot at freedom. A nation of their own. Equal rights, somewhere. But here is what they had not clocked yet. The white men running the society did not agree on anything except getting free black folks out. The abolitionists in it said colonization could only happen with consent. The enslavers in it said the society could never even mention emancipation. Same organization, opposite goals, held together by one shared belief. White prejudice was so deep, black and white people could never coexist as equals in America. So instead of fixing white people, they decided to ship black people out. They literally called it benevolent, for our own good. 1819. President James Monroe, yes, that Monroe, gave the ACS federal seed money to start the colony. The capital of Liberia is named Monrovia after him. That is how deep the U.S. government was in this. Over the next 47 years, 37% of ACS funding came directly from the federal government. Your tax dollars, going to a private organization whose stated purpose was to remove black people from the country. 1820, the first ACS ship sailed. They named it the Mayflower of Liberia. 86 black colonists, mostly from New York and Pennsylvania, landed at Sherbro Island off the West African coast. Malaria killed a significant number of them almost immediately. By 1821, an ACS agent and a U.S. Navy lieutenant secured the land that would become Liberia, paid for in goods worth about $7,000 today to 6 local leaders. Some accounts say the Navy man pulled a gun during negotiations. Either way, the land was now claimed. Throughout the 1820s, ACS chapters spread across nearly a dozen states. Virginia alone had 21 chapters. In Philadelphia. 1817, less than a year after the ACS formed, James Forten, sailmaker, Revolutionary War veteran, civil rights leader, called a community meeting at Richard Allen's Mother Bethel AME Church. Forten and Allen were personally leaning toward supporting the ACS. They put it to a vote. The result? More than 3,000 black Philadelphians packed that church. The rejection was so loud, so unanimous, Forten said it shook the walls. Not a single hand went up in support. From that day forward, Forten was one of the loudest opponents of colonization in America. The black community organized, fast, hard, and decisively, and beat back ACS recruitment for the next 2 decades. Why? 4 reasons. 1. Black abolitionists rejected the entire premise. They believed black and white Americans could live side by side as equals, if those in power dismantled the systems of discrimination. Don't move us. Fix this country. 2. The ACS was white-led and founded by enslavers. The same men who had profited off black suffering for generations were now claiming to know what was best for black freedom. The trust was zero. When black folks did consider emigration on their own terms to Haiti, to Sierra Leone, they did it independently. 3. The math did not math. Some estimates said it would cost $28 million to relocate every free black person, billions in today's money. Maria Stewart, one of the first black women in America to speak publicly on abolition, said that money should be going to education, to black institutions, right here. 4. And this one is the deepest. Going to Liberia meant abandoning the nearly 2 million black people still enslaved in America. Free black communities ran the Underground Railroad. They organized petitions, they wrote and published. To leave was to betray the goal, universal emancipation. David Walker put it plain in his 1829 appeal, one of the most radical documents in American history. He wrote, "Do they think to drive us from our country and homes after having enriched it with our blood and tears?" A year later, David Walker was found dead in Boston. He was 44. His killer was never identified. Many historians believe he was poisoned. That is how dangerous the truth was. By the early 1830s, the ACS was running on fumes. President Andrew Jackson, who had actually served as a vice president of the ACS, cut their federal funding. Why? An audit revealed they had been paid more than $250,000 and had only resettled 260 recaptured Africans. In total, after years of operation, only about 3,000 people had gone with the ACS to Liberia. Compare that to roughly 8,000 black Americans who had immigrated to Haiti on their own terms. The black community had won, but ideas like this, they do not die. They wait. The 1840s and 50s, tensions over slavery were tearing the country apart, and the ACS saw its opening. They started stoking white fear, especially in the Midwest and West, telling working-class white folks that free black people were coming for their land and their jobs. It worked. 1851, the ACS raised $100,000, their best year ever. States like Virginia, New Jersey, and Maryland started sending state money. Indiana revised its state constitution to ban free black people from living in the state. Read that again. The state constitution. Illinois passed a law preventing enslavers from freeing the people they enslaved because freed black people might try to live there. Then, in 1850, the federal government dropped the bomb, the Fugitive Slave Act. Any black person, free or not, could be arrested on the testimony of a white person claiming they were an escaped slave. No trial, no due process. Free black families who had lived in the North for decades were getting kidnapped off the streets. Helping someone meant fines and jail. Martin Delany called it the most disgraceful act of legislation ever enacted. Black America was under siege. So some, and I want you to understand this without judgment, some started reconsidering Liberia. Between 1848 and 1854 alone, about 4,000 black people left for Liberia. 6 years. That was more than the entire first 30 years of the ACS combined. Then, in 1857, the Supreme Court dropped Dred Scott. The ruling said, black people, free or enslaved, were not and could not be citizens of the United States. That broke something in Martin Delany. He stopped fighting for inclusion and started organizing for emigration to what is now Nigeria. By the late 1850s, the ACS picked up some interesting names. Robert E. Lee, yes, the Confederate general, freed most of the people he enslaved and offered to pay their passage to Liberia. And then there is Lincoln, Abraham Lincoln. The same Lincoln you learned was the great emancipator, supported the ACS. He allocated federal money for a black colony off the coast of Haiti. Frederick Douglass was not having it. He had been unwavering on this for decades. He wrote, "And so I once them there this so shame upon the guilty wretches that dare propose, and all that countenance such a proposition. We live here, have lived here, have a right to live here, and mean to live here. If we live here, we have lived here, we have a right to live here, and we mean to live here." That is the cipher, right there. Douglass even wrote to Lincoln's postmasters and suggested that if anyone should leave, it should be the white people. The postmaster wrote back with the quiet part out loud. He said, "Whites rule America, and the controlling races would not abdicate their power or surrender their country." By 1866, 50 years after founding, here is what the ACS had to show for itself. About 5,700 recaptured Africans, about 4,500 free Black Americans, about 5,957 people freed by manumission. Mandayung mani merchante wani baso sakori, meaning enslavers freed them only on the condition they leave the country. A little over 16,000 people total. More than $2 million spent. In Liberia, life was hard. 20% of first-generation colonists died from disease. They faced violent conflict with the 16 indigenous ethnic groups whose land they were now occupying. The ACS sent its last colonists in 1904. The organization was not officially dissolved until 1964, the same year as the Civil Rights Act. Let that sit. While Black Americans were marching and getting killed for the right to be full citizens, the American Colonization Society was still technically operating. Here is where this gets uncomfortable. You might think the idea of, if we cannot get along, just remove the people we do not want, died with the ACS. It did not. It just changed names. 1830, Indian Removal Act, forcibly relocating indigenous nations from their ancestral lands. Trail of Tears, the 1930s. The U.S. deports somewhere between 500,000 and 2 million Mexican Americans during the Great Depression. Most of them were U.S. citizens. The Filipino Repatriation Act. One-way tickets back to the Philippines. 1942. Japanese American incarceration. 120,000 people forced into camps. 2/3 of them American-born citizens. And today, you can still hear the echoes. Every time politicians frame entire communities as a problem to be removed. The question the ACS could never answer, the question they tried to dodge by literally putting people on ships, is the same question America is still wrestling with today. Who gets to be American? Frederick Douglass answered it, James Forten answered it, Maria Stewart answered it, David Walker answered it with his life. We live here. We have lived here. We have a right to live here. We mean to live here. That is the cipher. That is the answer. This story is from Reconstruction Uprisings and Coups, The War After Slavery, 1865 to 1900, available now. Until the next story, peace.